Welcome back to Men Without Masks. I'm pretty sure this is episode 14. I'm Dave and this is Lee. And today, believe it or not, this is our second time having this conversation. Last time we forgot to press record, so it was a great episode. So we're going to do it again and bring you all the value. So, what we're going to do today is we're going to talk around one of the biggest problems that me and Lee hear on people coming into our coaching programs, which is when men have low energy, right? Where energy is tanking, especially around the evening time after work. So, we're going to talk about why that is and practical strategies that you can do to resolve energy so you have more energy at home for your wife, for your kids, for your after work activities, whatever that may be.
Great stuff. And in the next 30 minutes, we are going to be providing as much value as we can. We're going to be covering the four levers that we see that actually move the needle on energy. And it's not what you might think, it's not just caffeine. As we all know, that's what we all think where we get our energy from. It's stress, sleep, hydration, and ultimately your nutrition, how you build your plate. So there's no hacks, there's no biohacks. It's just science and ultimately what you can do with it tonight that's going to have a benefit tomorrow morning. So, Dave, first one for you. So, when someone comes to you and they say they have no energy, what is actually going on under the hood?
Yeah. So look, it can be a good few things, right? So when someone comes in and asks that question, we'd obviously assess all sleep, lifestyle factors, stress load. But essentially what it comes down to is what we call a recovery deficit. Essentially your output has been greater than the input in regards to recovery habits for a couple of days to a couple of weeks to a couple of months. You know, it could be a chronic long-term problem. So one thing is overall stress load, right? And what we call that is allostatic load. It's a fancy word for just envision a bucket, okay? And in that bucket, it's full to the top of water, and the water is your stress load, or like I said, your allostatic load. So if you have more water coming into the bucket, you need to have a little tap towards the end of the bucket where that's coming out, and that's your recovery demands or your recovery habits. And if you don't have enough recovery habits, then eventually you're going to burn out because that bucket is overflowing with demands, work demands, poor sleep, poor nutrition. And essentially what that is doing is that's keeping us in a low grade fight or flight response nervous system state that we call your sympathetic nervous system. Okay. So sympathetic nervous system, like I said, is that fight or flight response. Think about 200,000 years ago, your fight or flight system would have saved you from running from a bear, running from a lion. You know, you were kind of always on edge because that was the realities for cavemen back in the day. But these days, you know, that kind of low grade fight or flight is from a stressful person, a stressful environment, a stressful email, or just poor stress management habits overall. Okay. So long term, high allostatic load without the right recovery habits can cause energy crashes, can make you sick, and increase what we call systemic inflammation. And systemic inflammation is what we know about systemic inflammation is that's basically the precursor to a lot of chronic diseases like cancers, heart attacks, strokes, etc. Okay, so what we need to do to reduce that allostatic load is a couple of big things. Number one, the foundation is your sleep quality and your sleep quantity. My clients are probably bored to death of me talking about sleep, but when someone shows me they're sleeping 5.5 hours, it's just the lowest hanging fruit because it's going to have the biggest and most immediate impact on stress hormones. Hydration status is another, short term, low hanging fruit. Resolve it in 24 hours, you're going to start feeling better pretty quickly. A lot of people don't understand that we lose water all the time through our breath, right? It's a non-sensorial action, so you can't feel it when it's actually happening, which is why you need to hydrate this, even though you may not be sweating or you might not be feeling that you are. And the composition of your meals, so we all eat anywhere from 1 to 5 times a day. Everyone's different, but what is actually in that meal, and that can have a big impact on you short term and long term when it comes to energy and stress management practices. So we're going to go through all those things to give you practical tips so you can improve your energy today, right? So one of the biggest things is, when fellas come through the program is that they tell us, they're really, really low on energy, but their caffeine intake could be really high. We know that's just putting a plaster over a flood, right? It's only going to give you that short term fix, and it's not really going to fix anything at all long term. And you're more likely to get that caffeine crash when you're caffeinated already wrecked, right? So that's it, guys. Okay, we're going to go through all those things and allostatic load, overall stress load. Just be aware of that. Okay. Any input on that, Lee? Before I ask you your one.
No, all sounds pretty good to me. And I think it's probably the coolest thing you said, I think, is just how our stress response hasn't actually evolved from
Yeah.
like years and years and years ago. So the same responses we feel, whether it's anxiety, racing heart rate, sweating, whatever it happens to be, racing thoughts. It's just crazy to think that that is how we used to respond to real how we did respond to real world threats, and now, like you said, it could be a stressful email, it could be a work deadline. So
Yeah.
it's just wonderful. It's crazy how things times have changed, but
Yeah.
us as humans again taking that bit longer.
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it? It's just like that is the same nervous system response. That is the same response that 200,000 years ago,
Hmm.
200,000 years ago, that people had run away from a lion. You know what I mean? Or
Yeah, and
fighting a
even
bear.
but that's the thing, and I think
In this life or
alongside
death
that is
situation.
yeah, for sure. And like alongside that as well, we don't have the same kind of scope to switch off from it all anymore. Because like you
Yeah.
know yourself, like so social media, the way it's all engineered, it's engineered to keep us hooked, to make us feel
Mm,
certain things, think certain
yeah.
ways. But even from as soon as you can walk, like there's expectation of what you should be doing, where you should be. All these different things
Mm,
that just wasn't necessarily the case. So it's one of these things that I think you have to try so much harder now to work around it. There has to be conscious effort, I believe, put into addressing these issues, because otherwise what happens, it controls us. I've been there. I know I have worked with a lot of clients that have had to do a lot of work on it as well. And
yeah.
unfortunately, there's like we all talk about our physical health, but like there's only one way to kind of work around these aspects we're talking about, especially from a stress perspective. It's
Yeah.
all it's therapy, it's self help, it's mindset.
Yep. 100%. And the only way through it is through it, brother. You
Yeah,
can't go
for
over it.
sure.
You can't go under it. You got to go through it.
Yeah.
You got to build that toolbox of stress management. So I know you're going to touch a little bit on this as well, Nelly. So, from your clients on a day-to-day basis, what's kind of the biggest energy drains that you find with your clients coming in that they weren't aware of?
To be honest, but like obviously there's your basics, your like deadlines and work, the emails, like work pressures. But what I
Yeah.
actually see one of the biggest ones is it's commitments, and it's not necessarily commitments to yourself, but it's commitments you have to other people. Things you say you'll do, how you have maybe filled up your calendar. And essentially, what that does, like if you're constantly on the go and never really having a chance to switch off and take time for yourself, that's where we slip into that kind of low grade fight or flight, because you're constantly stimulated. And it's not something people ever think to look at, because I think, especially in Ireland as well, everyone is nearly conditioned to say yes, right? You nearly feel bad about saying no or
Yeah.
refusing an invite to anything. But I have talked to more people that the usual don't have enough time in the week, there's never a way of getting things done. When you look at where all their time is being spent, the vast majority of it is being spent on others. And
Yeah.
that's always a hard conversation to have, especially for people who have kids, because the first thing they'll say is they don't want to take time away from them. But the reality is, it's not taking time away from them. It's giving them more quality time. And there's a guy, he's with me 12 weeks at this stage, and he has to sacrifice 40 minutes in his evening, 2 to 4 times a week, depending on what way his shift fell, that he just didn't get to see his daughter that night, that evening. And obviously that was
Mm.
tough at the beginning. But what it's done, it has given him so much more, because now he's able to run around the garden with her. He's able to spend more quality time with her. So yeah, it's the quantity is down, but the overall quality has improved. And it's something that I think people just massively overlook. And usually when you're that busy, when you're that on the go, what else suffers? Sleep, right? I am a
Yeah.
firm believer that sleep and stress are probably the two leading causes of most health issues, and that the studies all
Hmm.
back this up as well.
Hmm.
That it is rare, and we all will have a friend or a family member that's just completely chill, completely laid back.
Yeah.
And what you'll notice, they generally tend to sleep pretty well. They don't ever have any major rush about them. They're rarely actually that they rarely get sick. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Mm.
because their nervous system is probably as regulated as it could possibly be. And it's
Yep.
such a quick win. Like obviously nutrition plays a role. We know training plays a role, but honestly, like nutrition and training can very easily overload a system where sleep and stress is just running unchecked.
Yep. Yep.
And
No, I love it, man.
it's just such an easy, quick win. Like it's the first thing that I focus on with anyone that comes on board is like we want to get you feeling as good as we can, as quick as we can. My thought process is if you can get someone feeling great, then you can ask them to try run through a wall, and they're probably going to be more likely to do it.
Yeah.
Whereas, how do most people start these things? Most people start these things from a place of pain. Most people start these things feeling shit, feeling tired, feeling just overwhelmed, not good about themselves. So what do? Is they cut out all the good stuff in their life, all the socializing, all the fun food, and they go crazy from an exercise perspective. So in my opinion there, you're just exacerbating that debt because now you've probably taken away the one thing that made it all worthwhile, which was fulfillment and enjoyment. And
Mm.
I personally think from an overall stress perspective, if you are constantly on the go and you're never taking time for yourself, you're never probably truly really enjoying everything you're doing because you don't have time to sit and just be at peace and give
Yeah.
your nervous system a chance. And there's actually
Yeah.
a client of mine that comes to mind, and she's in a very similar position where stress is just it's just high because of the job, and it is what it is. Like we've done everything we can. So I'm kind of the opinion if we've done everything we can, then it doesn't do to throw any extra attention towards it because it actually makes things even more stressful in retrospect. But it's the same kind of principle. When what we have with her is we make her take a couple hours or a day every weekend where it's just her time, and it has worked wonders from an overall kind of
Mm.
stress management perspective.
Yeah. It's mad, isn't it? I have a similar story as well with a recent client as well who was so motivated, training very, very consistently. We deloaded after a few weeks when we had a couple of signs. And then recently she was kind of fatigued again, right? And she's a teacher, right? And I remember PTing a teacher a couple of years back. It was the same thing. Kind of towards the end of every semester, she was just exhausted, man, mentally and
Yeah,
emotionally. And fair play to teachers because every time I do coach them, I always just get that real world example of mental and emotional fatigue, right? So they're just like, not showing any like joint pain or anything like that, or it's not coming through in their training too much yet, but after a couple of days or a couple of weeks, if you ignore it, they do actually start to get weaker based on the fatigue, right? Um, but yeah, you essentially need to give yourself some time to recover because as soon as motivation starts to dip, if you usually are a motivated individual, you are sleeping well, you're eating well, you're hydrating really well, and then that motivation starts to dip a couple of days in a row, training starts to feel a little bit harder than usual. And this teacher, this was exactly what happened. So consistent, like nutrition's class, hydration's class, steps, everything, sunlight. Like she's absolutely smashing it, right? And then towards the middle of last week, seeing her in her training load trends that the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday session of last week were trending up. They were kind of harder than usual. We had a little chat. How are you feeling? No, I'm good. I think it's just this. I think it's just that. All right, okay. Keep an eye on it. And now she's wrecked this week, right? Now we deloaded on Monday, but upon reflection, we're like, now everyone's fatigue cycles are different, okay? But how did you feel last week when we had that conversation? Oh, motivation was down actually more than usual, and I know we said training was a little bit harder, but I thought that was just the thing. So now we've learned more data. Okay, when that starts to happen, come week 4, week 5, everyone's different, right? It might happen in week 4, might happen in week 6, might happen in week 8, depending on many factors. So we should listen when that starts to happen again, about 2 days in a row. You just tell me straight away if it's before check-in, and we do a little reactive deload. So everyone has these fatigue cycles, right? It's normal to feel fatigued as well. But the thing is that when it does happen, know when to take the foot off the gas because you're just going to get ill. You're just going to it's going to take you longer to recover from that fatigue, right? So that's when the no pain, no gain, all or nothing kind of individuals seem to fall short in that kind of cycle. So definitely give yourself some recovery time.
yeah, and I think building on that then as well, like I think a lot of it just comes down to negligence on like people's own behalves. Like if you're constantly just going to ignore the signs and push, 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 it's on you. Like if you have been given
Yeah.
the info, if the help is there, and you
Mm.
decide to ignore it and keep doing it, then that's on you. Like yeah, we can talk about kind of subconscious conditioning that maybe that's just how they're wired. Obviously, we know we can
Yeah.
change that, but like I've seen it time and time again, the people that get on the best, and the crazy thing is, right, I have seen a definite correlation that it's the people who are probably a step above again, who are maybe kind of in management positions, business owner positions. I find that they are actually even more the ones that do well. They're so clued into these things. They know what they can push. They know when they need to pull back. Like myself, for example, I know I can do maybe 4 or 5 nights where if I work late and I cut my sleep, but if I keep that going, I need to pull back. So that is always nearly followed by 2 days, maybe 1 or 2 days of, right, well, we pull back, we just reset. So I think a lot of it is just doing your due diligence around kind of the awareness and the signs rather than just pushing yourself into a hole every single time. Now, look, like I am still a believer that sometimes you just have to push and do more than you've had to, which is obviously going to have like a recoil, a bounce back.
Yeah.
But you can work around it. Like I've worked with clients as well, same similar to that lady as well, where like you can keep going this way, and you can keep having to deload every 4 weeks. But if you're looking
Mm,
at that over the course of a year, why
mm,
why can't we find an approach that allows you to just auto regulate that, right, rather than having to take complete time off? Now, why can't we just
yep.
understand that, right, warning signs are creeping in, let's just
Yep.
pull back? So we like to play at 95%, which is a great place to be. Well, let's pull
Mm,
back to 60 or 70, which allows you then to not have to take time off per se. I think
yeah.
is, and that's tougher. That's the thing, it's tougher because it's
Yeah.
very easy for someone to just run themselves to the ground, take some time off, and do it all over again. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's absolute fact, man. And it's a great learning example because when I used to coach mainly CrossFitters, I used to deal with most competitive CrossFitters every 4 weeks, right?
Mm.
Um, but then there were some individuals who would still feel fine, still training well, still tolerating the stress well until week 5 or 6,
Yeah.
or 7. So nowadays I'm definitely more data driven and more reactive when it comes to a deload. Because like you said there, man, like that's 12 weeks of the year in a deload where an individual might not have to be in a deload for
Yeah.
that at all. You might need a 3-day deload when fatigue starts to creep in and when the training loads are harder than usual and motivation starting to dip. Like that's where I am right now. Trained yesterday, only had energy for a zone 2 cardio session. Monday training was harder as well. Becky gets, often small colds and flus over working in the nursery. So I just knew the cycle. I was like, I know if I go gym today, I'm just going to be more fatigued for the rest of the week. So just take
Yeah.
an off day today and go back
Yeah.
on Thursday. I usually rest on Thursdays. Right, I'm going to go back tomorrow. I feel good today. So just
That's
know that
massive.
routine. Yeah.
It's massive. I'm not personally a fan of pre-planned deloads because
Yeah.
I just think it can now with the data we know how people work. It's completely counterproductive
Yeah.
because the point of a deload is to allow you to then go back and do a higher quality of work. But if
Yeah.
it's not actually necessary, then
If
what's
you're
the
still
purpose?
doing high quality work,
Yeah, you know what I mean.
you're doing really
Um,
well. Let's take a rest week.
yeah, and I also think
Good
as well, like
learning.
you mentioned yourself as well, like just taking that day off. It's just
Mm.
knowing when to push and when to pull. Like I am a
Yeah.
big, and most of my clients will attest to, like we will push as much as we possibly can, as hard as we possibly can, but we don't let ourselves push too far
Yeah.
because you know yourself, especially summer is a great example of it, right? Energy is all over the place because everyone has 100 different things on every single week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
all of a sudden, like what I had a chat with a client yesterday where it was like, right, well, August is probably the most social month he has had so far. So I said, right, well, I think then, to be honest, like a more realistic outlook for August is probably maintenance rather than putting the pressure on of having to still progress and maybe see another couple of kgs come down. We still keep doing all the things to facilitate this, but we also want to enjoy life. So let's remove the pressure around it that we do all the things because that's part of who we are,
Yep.
but we removed the expectation because ultimately, what benefit does it serve? If and I had this chat as well, slightly off tangent as it always is with us, but I was like, there's a cost and there's a price to pay to everything. Like if you want to make more progress, then you have to sacrifice aspects of probably enjoying life because there's too much of it in retrospect and comparison. And if you're not willing to pay that price, and there's no right or wrong answer here, by the way, then it doesn't make sense to have literally unrealistic expectations. Your expectations should always be aligned to the actions and the timeline, I believe.
Yeah, yeah. Like I said there, there's no right or wrong answer, but if someone wants to go achieve, a big aspiring goal, but it's like, well, how much are you willing to sacrifice, and for how long are you willing to sacrifice
Yeah,
that for, and how much are you willing to make this a part of your identity, because you're just gonna have to become a person who does X, Y, and Z habit for months and years, to become that.
yeah.
But yeah, it's a great shout, man.
Question for you,
Sweet.
Dave.
Hit me.
Question for you. So back to sleep, back to stress. What do you think, or could you even just walk us through what you reckon long-term stress is actually doing to sleep, and how it
Yep.
impacts even next day energy and the day after and so on?
Yeah, cool. So one of the biggest things that I wanted to touch on here was the impacts of sleep on your hormones. And your hormones are essentially, they're like little control commands, right? They just have massive influence on how you feel, and therefore your thoughts, and therefore your behaviors and actions. Okay. So hormones are massive. So you got to set the stage for hormones to be serving you well instead of to be working against you, right? So if you're super stressed or if you're really underslept, okay, your stress hormone cortisol is elevated for longer periods the next day. Now we need the stress hormone cortisol, okay? It helps us to wake up and it peaks earlier on in the day. But if you're super stressed or underslept, that cortisol stays elevated, can stay elevated for the afternoon, late afternoon, and into the evening. And we need cortisol to dip so our sleep hormone melatonin can elevate. But melatonin can't elevate efficiently if cortisol is still elevated. So that's one of the biggest impacts that a good sleep can have, is that it's going to get you in this good sleep and wake cycle of cortisol elevating when it needs to wake you up, that it decreases as the day goes on, and melatonin increases so that you start to feel sleepy. But that relationship is dysregulated if your sleep and wake cycles are all over the place, different sleep time every day, different wake time every day, excessive caffeine too late in the day is going to disrupt that as well. So that's one of the biggest hormonal effects it's going to have. The other one is we talked about your sympathetic or fight or flight nervous system state earlier on in the podcast, but you also have the other one, which is your parasympathetic nervous system state, which is your rest and digest state. Okay, we can tap into that through meditation, through journaling, classical music, time in nature, time with a loved one, painting, whatever, whatever activity makes you feel that you're truly present in the moment. And we truly are recovering, i.e., resting and digesting well, when we're in that nervous system state. So we're spending way less time in that state when we're underslept and overstressed as well. And so that nervous system states and the hormonal impacts is one of the biggest reasons why we need to be slept and we need to have good stress management practices. So if you're underslept and overstressed, we need to resolve those two things so you can get into a parasympathetic nervous system state more frequently, and that you can get into a more regular sleep and wake cycle as well to resolve those issues. So yeah, they're the main things, man.
Yeah, I love
What do you
it.
think?
I think it's something that's it's probably a superpower. Like I would think it is probably more common to not sleep than it is to sleep. To be honest, just from what I have seen with all the clients I've worked with over the years, it's more often now that people just aren't sleeping. They're not getting the
Yeah,
quantity, they're not getting the quality. And I think that's actually an important distinction to make, because obviously we all see all over online is what I was trying to say, all
yeah,
online about how we need to be getting 7 to 9 hours. And look, like there's no arguing with the data, but there also is a massive like realism component that comes into this as well. If you are
yeah,
someone who only has 6 hours to sleep, you need to just maximize your quality, because there are people like that. And I actually find as well that for someone who it is literally impossible for them to get more hours in bed, trying to draw more attention towards things like this causes more stress, which will then
mm,
impact sleep. So something
yeah,
I've become quite aware of over probably the past year is obviously when we're working with clients and we see issues and we see problems, initially the reaction will be, well, let's just fix this. But now it more so is going to be, right, is this something that can be fixed? And is this
yeah,
something that the juice is worth the squeeze? compared to the stress that it might entail. And I think that has worked wonders for, I think, kind of longevity and sustainability in this game, because if you're talking to clients that have issues, and obviously we want to fix them all, but they can't. There's nothing more that can possibly be done. And by you drawing more attention towards it, i.e., sleep, you actually exacerbate the issues. I had a chat with a psychologist years ago around sleep, and he said it's the craziest kind of contra.
Kind of
What
like a
is it?
paradox.
Yeah, paradox. That's the word. Where
Yeah.
we need to have a perfect night's sleep, but the more you think and overthink about having that perfect night's sleep, the
Yeah.
less likely
Yeah.
you are to sleep, the more your stress is
Yes.
going to drive up. And that
So
all,
true.
isn't it? And it all links back to your
Yeah.
sympathetic state, because what you're doing
Mm.
is you might be doing everything perfectly, but because you were doing it all from a kind of more stressed state and you're driving yourself more sympathetic, then you're actually massively impacting it. So it's
Mm.
great. It's
Mm.
a tough one. It's a tough one
It
because
is.
if you're trying to coach someone through improving their sleep without having them think about improving their sleep too much, then
Yep.
it's a fucking tough
Yep.
job. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And do you know what, man? That's when the true art of coaching comes in. I've coached pilots. Being here in Abu Dhabi, pilots come through the program as well, and cabin crew. And these people have the most dysregulated sleep pattern you can find.
Yeah,
Factory workers as well. My hometown, Waterford, back in Ireland, there's a lot of factory workers. So they do shift work as well. Working all night. So that's dysregulated sleep. So these kind of individuals, they are living the reality of this 7 to 9 hours. And okay, yeah, the biggest thing is a regular sleep time and wake time, but they don't have that privilege, right? And
yeah,
access to that. So the thing after that then is we need to coach through and be aware of the impacts of your relationship to sleep. That's crucial. Like you need to have that radical acceptance of my body will take what it needs with the conditions that I'm giving it. I can only influence those conditions as best I can through having the aircon on, having a good pillow, having a good,
yeah.
mattress. I've done some journaling. I've read a book. My screens are off. After that, you got it. You got it. Radical acceptance. The nervous system will take what it needs. But if you're like, if I go to sleep now, I'm just gonna have 4 hours left, which is, do you know what I mean? You're kind of counting back. This is what I do. You're counting back. You're like, oh, I'm actually gonna be wrecked tomorrow because it's only 5 hours or
Yeah.
whatever. But just reframe that with that radical acceptance. Still train the next day. Your tolerance is going to be lower. Might feel a bit harder, but nothing changes, right? Only the awareness. But just having that radical acceptance and improving your relationship with sleep is going to help massively with that.
Absolutely. And it all links back to something we said a while back, just about how understanding your own system, what you can, from a demands and a stress perspective, what you can handle. If you were someone who just gets less sleep for whatever reason, then I think the more aware you are around how much you can push, and you will likely, if you're someone who sleeps a bit less due to whatever constraints, you probably will have to pull back more often than someone who gets their 8 or 9 hours. It's just fact,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because
yeah,
you likely would have a decreased sense of, or a heightened sense of kind of stress perception around different things. You're likely
yeah,
going to be more sympathetically driven, so you're going to be, even without even trying, you're probably going to be more into your kind of fight or flight mode than you are your
definitely.
rest and digest. Because from an
Mm,
internal perspective, you haven't actually got the amount of sleep that you maybe need. But now I
yeah,
also have seen your mental outlook on these things and how you kind of talk to yourself about it plays a massive role.
yeah,
You can literally trick yourself, not even trick yourself, but if you tell yourself all night how you're going to be tired tomorrow, you're going to be tired. If you tell yourself how you're going to be fine, you're probably going to be okay.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And
It's so true, man.
isn't it? And
Health,
then,
health,
like,
anx- health anxiety, man. That's where my mind
yeah,
goes there. White coat syndrome. That's where my mind
yeah.
goes there.
And like, as well as that, so some kind of, it's almost like a framework I use with clients. Like, if we're stressed about something, and by taking an action we can change the outcome, then right, it's probably worth being stressed, because we can actually influence the outcome by whatever actions we take. But if the
Yep.
result is fixed, and no matter what we do, the result is inevitable, it's not going to change. I personally don't feel there is as much benefit to assigning stress to said thing, said task. Now, what does
Yep.
this look like? this could look like someone who has a work deadline is probably the most common example. That deadline
Mm.
is fixed. It's not going to change. Historically, you know, you've always hit the deadline. So
Uh-huh.
you have proof of concept. You know it works. You know you'll make it. So now the choice kind of becomes, do you want to make this deadline and be stressed as much as you possibly can be? Or do you want to do all the same actions you're going to do, knowing you're going to get there at the same time, you're going to meet the deadline, and just maybe not be so stressed? And it sounds
Yeah, yeah.
stupid, right? It sounds stupid when I say it
Mm-hmm.
like that. But there's a lot of scenarios and times in our week and our month where we actually just enforce things on ourselves. Like, that's always my thing. If can we influence the outcome by taking an action? Yes, then okay, then maybe we could worry a bit. That will stress in and of itself isn't inherently bad. But if we can't and we're assigning unnecessary stress to it, that's where the issues come from. And I would argue that is where most of us spend our time stressing. It's over shit that just doesn't matter or just can't be
Yeah.
changed.
Mm. Yeah, no, it's a great perspective, man, and it's a nice when you were just explaining that. There's just a flow chart going off in my head. You know what I mean? It's just like perceived issue. Can action highly influence it? Yes,
Yeah.
do that thing, or no, let it go.
Yeah.
That's it. You know what I
And
mean?
look,
Easier
man,
said than
it's,
done for sure.
yeah, you beat me to it
Requires
there. It
practice.
is. But it's just, man, it's like everything. It's just having the awareness around these things. And I think as well as this, like everyone focuses on the physical and physically becoming like their best self. But I don't think people realize there is more power in flexing the mental side of things. Like we should be looking to improve mentally and psychologically every bit as much, if not even more so, than physically,
Yeah, yeah,
I believe.
100%, 100%. Yeah, and I think that that is slowly changing, and I think it will change more. You know, like just from my perspective, the longer you're in this game, man, and you're coaching health and performance or whatever you want to call it, man, it's an ever ending game, right? And
Yeah.
when I feel like I learned something, I like to learn the next thing or the next tool that I can help people with. You know what I mean? And definitely that's psychology, mental performance, improving mental and emotional wealth, I like to call it. Um, I think we are going to see a large increase in interest in those things,
For
because
sure.
everyone knows, right? It's not just about six packs and abs and whatever. Um, it's the quality of your relationships as well, and your
Yeah.
relationship with from you to yourself as well. So especially in men, I think we're going to see a greater interest in that. Definitely, I have anyway. So I think that's my next move in coaching. I can tell you that.
Yeah, absolutely. And like the other side of it is, Dave, like how often, like if you're with a client longer than a couple of months, how often are you really talking about nutrition and training at that point? Like you're still obviously you're still acknowledging it all and we're still working through and guiding because that's part of what we do. But the
Yep.
majority of the time is around mindset and it's around psychological triggers. And ultimately, if someone has proven they can go and exercise and look after themselves and manage nutrition, then where did the issues come from? It's not physical, it's not knowledge. It's the fact that there's some level of psychological components there that just aren't aligned yet. And that's where most of the work is because
Yep.
you want to be able to shift away from, and again, this links back to stress, to be more kind of identity and autonomously driven rather than having to think about every single thing that you still have to do. That's something that I'm quite big on in the initial weeks with anyone that starts with me is like, we're obviously building routines and habits, but we want to make this as seamless, as friction free as possible because that's where success long term comes from when you're not having to think about all these things. If you're still 6 and 9 months, 12 months down the line thinking about everything you have to do, then you probably haven't really done the work that is being required.
Yeah. Yeah.
Provided
You got to learn.
guidance and has been there and just been growth has been
Yeah. Yeah.
facilitated.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, you got to learn, you got to apply. Like you said, you got to reduce the path of most resistance to do any behavior or habit and put that in the path of least resistance so you're more likely to do it. Like
Yeah,
having this bottle of water within arm's reach instead of it being in the fridge over there and I'm less likely to
yeah,
go get it. Simple things like that. And do that often enough with the support of your coach that it becomes a part of your identity. And then, oh, I'm just a person who drinks 4 liters of water a day. I've always been this way, but you weren't that way 12 weeks ago. Do you know what I mean? So yeah, I love it. Touching on your stressors thing there, Lee, as well. There's a lot of hidden stressors that we were talking about before the podcast as well. So, for people that come through your program, just from your experience, what are other hidden stressors that people don't think about that is impacting their stress load?
So I think for this one, we'll probably just dive into kind of nuts and bolts of what everyone probably does on a daily or weekly basis. We've done a lot on kind of like the actual mindset and the internal perspective, but there's a lot to be said for everything external and how it impacts us. So probably, and it's
Mm,
probably one I have the most experience with myself, is caffeine intake. So I
mm,
personally think a lot and most people have consume way too much caffeine in their day because
mm.
you're pouring stimulants on top of an already highly stimulated and dysregulated system, nervous
Yeah,
system.
yeah.
And that's what
Mm,
stimulants do. They trigger a more sympathetic state. So we know then that if you are someone who is already quite stressy, maybe you freak out about fucking getting to work on time, or maybe you think about
yeah,
missing your alarm, right? So you're someone
yeah.
who's stuck in low grade fight or flight, and now what you're
Bro,
doing is you're essentially adding fuel to the fire. That's basically
yeah.
what caffeine is on top here.
Yeah, man, I have a great story. I'm so sorry for interrupting you, but this is, and some people will be able to relate to this, but this is hilarious, right? So, in one employment here in Abu Dhabi, right? Uh, got a little gig to do stress management presentations, right, for this company or whatever. And it was online, and I was like, oh, sweet, I love presentations. You know, I was CrossFit coach for nearly 8 years. You're doing presentations 4 times a day. You know, if you're doing 4 classes, I was good at presentations in college, the whole lot, right? But this was a new environment, whatever. You know, normally going into a new environment, it was, I had a little bit of performance orientated anxiety, normal stuff, right? Anyway, I was preparing for the presentation that morning, had my slides on the next day, and I was kind of practicing it, whatever. It was a real busy time as well, so I don't think I got to practice the presentation as much as I would like to. But I think I had 2 coffees before 12 o'clock, right? And let's say the presentation was at 12, right? So like you said there, I was already a little bit anxious, and I remember the presentation started, and I just felt this adrenaline dump. You know what I mean? I was gonna faint, man, on an online PowerPoint presentation.
Yeah.
I was thinking to myself, what the hell is wrong with me here? Like, and then I even texted my manager at the time after. I was just like, did you see that? Like, she was just like, no, like, what's the story? I was just like, I think I nearly fainted at the start of that. Like, I just got this real dump. Like, I was just way too over caffeinated. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I remember when me and you were in Dubai, I actually said it to your man Kieran O'Neill, the mental performance coach. He was like, "Oh, take L-theanine if you take too much caffeine." So that my mind always goes to that story. If you're already in a heightened state, already a bit anxious, underslept, overstimulated, one of the worst things that you could do is put more stimulation on that.
Yeah.
You need to go into rest and digest. I should have meditated for half an hour before that, not double up on my caffeine intake. You know what I mean?
I think a lot of it though as well, man, a lot of it comes down to, at least for myself, so I'll actually add my own story to that trip we had in Dubai, that business conference we were at. So
Mm.
you know yourself when you're in a new room, like you keep your hands busy. That's what I always do. I'm very expressive anyway, so I'll always keep my hands busy. I have a bottle of water on standby because you can just drink, and it just, for me,
Yeah.
it's a small bit of a fidget, but it just keeps the mind whatever. But I had lost my
Mm.
water bottle that morning, and then there's a coffee. This is a great coffee, grand. I'll do it. But I wasn't aware that caffeine or coffee in Dubai is like 2 or 3 times the
Yeah,
strength
it's
of.
strong, bro. Yeah.
So I had it gone in maybe 20 minutes, and because I was just a small bit nervous, just meeting all these new people,
Mm,
and
mm.
I swear, and I felt like I had been hit by a ton of bricks for that. I was as anxious as I'd ever
Rattle.
been. I was like, not that I obviously did, but I was like, there had to be something more than caffeine in that coffee because I was
Yeah.
absolutely equal parts wired and knackered and alert, and I was on
Yeah.
edge, and yeah, so like, this is a
Yeah.
thing. But I also know my caffeine tolerance is quite low. Like I can
Mm, mm,
feel a Coke Zero impact on me. Now that's grand because it doesn't impact
mm,
much, but I can notice
mm.
the difference. And then
Yeah.
when I went, so what usually caffeine for me, I just use it for training for the most part. I try not to personally when I'm not training, I try not to have caffeine because look, most of what we do doesn't, I don't think, requires us to be unbelievably stimulated, right?
No.
And we also know from taking a break from our nervous system is obviously ideal. But took a break, training break on holidays, took a week off. I just ended up being sick, as more so forced than not. As is the way when
Mm.
you go on holidays, you end up fucking getting
Yeah.
a dose.
Yeah.
And so no caffeine over the week. I always take a break for a week or two every so often anyway. Came back and went back to my normal amount, which was maybe 2 spoons pre-training. And same
Mm.
thing, it knocked me for 6. I was absolutely amped for the day. I didn't sleep that night. at all. And I
Yeah.
was
Oh,
like scratching
Jesus.
my head the next day. I was like, what the fuck happened? And I was
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
right, it
yeah.
had to be in the caffeine. So I think it's
Wow.
something, yeah, like unbelievably so. And then I did an experiment about a year ago where I had a coffee or two every single day for a month just to see what impact it would have, knowing how sensitive I was. I was going to kind of like
Mm.
desensitize myself. It's let me the opposite. Like I haven't had anxiety really for fucking years. Nothing really gets
Mm.
me. Maybe acute bits here and there. But for that
Yeah.
month, from about week 2 onwards, it came back, kicked me like a ton of bricks. And I was like, what the fuck is after happening? So then I was like,
Mm.
right, let's just cut it out. Within a week, I was back to baseline, back to normal. So I think a lot
Madness.
of people, it's crazy, man.
So
A
tell
lot of
me, the two spoonfuls, is that freeze dried instant coffee as well you were having?
that would have been, yeah, like, 'cause I I love my coffee,
Bro,
so I
your
just,
caffeine sensitivity is through the roof. Your
yeah,
tolerance is like on the
it's
ground, man.
minimal. But that's the
The amount of
thing.
caffeine I have would probably kill you.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like because I know, like it's funny. Different types of caffeine impact different ways. Caffeine from coffee
Mm.
can interact differently from an absorption perspective. But
Mm.
yeah, like if I was to try like a pre workout, I've never tried one. It was like 250, 300 milligrams. Like
Yeah,
it's
yeah,
not
man.
fucking.
It's a
It's
can of
not.
monster in a scoop. Like, yeah, it's mental.
Yeah, you know what I mean. But again,
Yeah.
I think a lot of it also comes down to my own awareness. So now, what I will do more often than not, I'll maybe have coffee once or twice a week because
Mm.
I know I'll just start having it starts impacting me quite quickly. So
Yeah.
if I'm extremely tired, if I have a bit of a funny enough, I'm not sure if you get it, but caffeine can have actually mood boosting effects. So
Yeah.
I've read
Oh,
a couple of studies on it. So like there'd be often times where I'd just be feeling flat in the morning, feeling flat and tired. Caffeine, you
mm.
get a small bit of a kind of like a Q
Small
cortisol
little hit.
spike. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I will use it for that purpose as
Stimulant.
much as I will. I don't use it for energy or awareness, more so as training
Yeah.
performance, or if I have an unbelievably heavy day at work, where I was like, "Right, I'm going to be working late anyway, then I'll probably have
Mm.
it." But
Yeah.
I most people don't think of it like that. Most people just have a coffee in the morning, a monster at lunch, and fucking two coffees in the evening.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
like it's oftentimes clients that come to me and they would have be complaining of anxiety like symptoms, and obviously like I'm not a psychologist, but I've done my time and all that stuff, so I have a basic understanding to help with the rudimentaries. And generally 9 times out of 10 there's a high caffeine consumption, and it's always linked with poor energy, because as we know there's we can actually develop a caffeine kind of dependency. It's not addictive, but we can develop
Mm.
loops ourselves that our energy actually starts spiking and dropping in line with when we're generally going to get our caffeine hit. So it's something straight away, if you pull your caffeine down but replace it with water, 9 times out of 10, you're actually just dehydrated rather than like
Yep.
low energy. You know what I mean?
100%. 100%.
And
And a lot of these people don't have enough water anyway, you know.
yeah,
So, if you're having, if your water intake is just coffee, then, you know, you need to get that water up.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
I was
So
gonna
it's
say it to
just, yeah, go for
you.
it.
Yeah. Yeah. Any more hidden stressors, man? I'm going to touch on dehydration and the impacts on that now in a minute. But before I take over there, any other hidden stressors that you feel the guys should
So
know
I
about?
think alcohol is going to be one, but I think everyone knows alcohol is toxic. Everyone knows, even like, look, not a thing. If you want to enjoy it, by all means, but everyone more or less knows at this stage the impacts it does have. But what
Yeah.
I think is actually even more of an issue, man, is just the constant stimulation we have from the environments we're in. Like our environments are everything. So, like you mentioned yourself about kind of screen time, and for anyone who kind of maybe doesn't know so much, so we know that melatonin is what we need to sleep, but we
Yep.
also know what inhibits your melatonin production, and it's the light into the eyes. So if we're getting like daylight, for example, we're not going to be producing much melatonin. It increases as in terms of like our light cycle progresses through the day.
Hmm.
But the issue is, how often are people glued to their screens all day and all night? So your
Yeah.
eyes and your brain is getting constantly stimulated, constantly overloaded, to a point that come evening time, come night time, you're on your phone in bed, your brain hasn't really recognized that it is nighttime. So as a result, our melatonin production is massively blunted. So when a lot of people have dysregulated sleep, the first port of call is always going to be is always going to be what's your 60 to 90 minutes before bed looking like. Nine
Yeah.
times out of 10, if screens are in play, that's probably almost going to be the answer. So I think stimulation from, like we said before, like emails, texts, people, like social media, I think is the big one because it's designed to hook us. It's designed
Yeah.
to keep us there. So now we have a dual factor. We have the light exposure and artificial and blue light,
Mm,
which is what keeps us awake, along with the kind of stimulation. And we also kind of have the dopamine hit. So they're three fucking
mm,
powerhouses.
mm.
Last
Yeah.
minute, last thing in the day when you're trying to go to sleep and you're trying to fight those, it's just not going to happen.
Yeah, man. Yeah. I love the topic of easy non-work related dopamine hits that you didn't have to put any effort in for, you know, and just how that has a massive impact on people's desire and relationship for challenging tasks. You know, you got to
Yeah.
work for that dopamine hit. You work for that dopamine hit, it's what a hit that is. You know what I mean? Boy, you're just getting that at easy access, man. You know, and it's not
But
it's not great for
but
for
that's the
for
thing.
many things in life.
And but just one point on that as well. I downloaded an app last week. It's called One Sec. But I just found
Mm,
myself fall into the habit, especially like when you work online. It's so easy to get stuck. When you're
yeah,
already there, just start fucking scrolling
yeah,
through. But I was just
yeah.
getting fed up because all of a sudden there's time gone. You don't feel the better for
Mm,
it. And it's
no,
not fulfilling or enjoyable, really. You know what I mean?
no.
So I downloaded One Sec. Basically, what it does is it's a pattern interrupt. So every time I try open the Instagram app or Facebook or Reddit, whatever it is, I get linked shortcuts straight through to this app where it has like a 5 second, almost like a countdown, and then it actually prompts you to justify why you're going to this app. So it is annoying as fuck. It wrecked my head for the first week. I was like, I'm just going to fucking delete
Yeah,
this.
yeah,
But
yeah.
fucking the screen time is down massively.
Nice.
Productivity is way up. And now, two
Yeah.
weeks in, I'm automatically picking it up and nearly putting the phone back down because I know I have to go through that, what is not really an ordeal, but that ordeal to actually access it.
Friction.
It's a game
Yeah.
changer. It's a
Yeah.
game
Path of
changer.
resistance.
Yeah.
Mm, nice. I'm going to download that.
Honestly, man,
Best
it's
of
a
worst thing
fucking
ever, man, doing online coaching, man, isn't it? It's just like,
yeah.
oh, look
But
at this.
like,
This is, and then it's so hard.
but like this thing,
Get
I didn't
distracted.
mind. I could handle the bit of scrolling if you're just doing it every so often. But the fact that it
Yeah.
was, you have that feeling of like unproductivity after then as well, or
Yeah.
you have the feeling of urgency because shit. Well, I'm after spending 20 minutes here, which I didn't really have. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So we're back after a brief intermission. Dave, I have a question for you to kick things back off. What does practical hydration look like?
Yeah. So obviously, we're talking about all things energy today, lads, right? And some of the biggest things that gets overlooked that I'm finding consistently is just fluid intake, right? So as I said earlier, we lose fluid every minute of the day through our breath. Okay, so not only when we sweat, not only when we exercise, it's through our breath as well. Okay, and also when we go to the toilet. Okay, so a lot of it is non-sensorial, meaning you don't even feel that it's happening, which is one reason why you need to replace it all the time. Okay, so hydration is definitely underhyped rather than overhyped. Quick thing, you don't need electrolytes, unless you're training 60 plus minutes. You can just drink water upon waking. Doesn't have to be electrolytes. Don't fall into the trap. Save your money. Okay, quick one. So here's a few dehydration stats just to show you the impact that this can have. Okay, so mild dehydration is defined as when you lose around 1 to 2% of your body weight. Okay, now that can be just in around a 60-minute training session. It's not that long, right? But if you don't replace the fluids that you've lost, or if you just dehydration upon waking and you have chronically low fluid intake, that is going to reduce energy. 1% of your body weight, lads. Okay, so if you're 80 kilos or whatever, what is that? Is that 80 milliliters? It's
Yeah.
not that much. It's not that much fluid loss at all. Okay, so that is going to reduce your energy. It is going to reduce your mood, and it is going to impact your exercise performance. Only 1 to 2%. Okay, so yeah, mild dehydration itself can induce fatigue. It reduces vigor, which is your overall vitality and desire to do anything. In men as well, 0.9% body water loss increased pain perception and reduced pain tolerance. So if you're in any activity like martial arts, for example, boxing, MMA, jiu-jitsu, whatever the case may be, your pain threshold is going to be lower. Your pain tolerance is going to be lower. Your pain sensitivity is going to be higher. Okay. And that's only less than 1% dehydration. Okay. At 2% dehydration, your endurance performance drops. So anyone who's into running, loves to go for a run, cardio performance is going to drop at 2%. At 3% fluid loss, your strength and power performance is going to reduce. Bodybuilders, crossfitters, Olympic weightlifters, anyone that is going to the gym, done. Okay. You're not going to be able to access or express the strength that you have if you're dehydrated. And also, dehydration often is a mask for hunger. So, thirst is a very similar sensation to hunger as well. So, if you're reaching for your snacks in between meals, high calorie snacks, you could just be literally thirsty. You could literally just be dehydrated. So, appetite regulates as well when we're hydrated. So, that's going to have a positive knock on effect to nutritional consistency as well, right? And the last thing then is that it raises your RPE. So when you do go training, being dehydrated, the weight that was pretty handy last week is feeling a lot heavier this week. It's feeling more difficult. You have to put in more effort to overcome the same outputs in training that you usually do if you are dehydrated as well. So it's just a triple whammy, right? So it's one of the lowest hanging fruits and one of the most immediate things that you can do to improve your energy and exercise performance, which is just get hydrated. Okay. And there's so many people not drinking enough. So how much you actually drink is completely dependent on, you, body weight, your sweat rate, and if you're a salty sweater, right? But generally, you want to be somewhere in that 2 to 5 liter range. Massive, massive range. I know, okay? But if you are within, 2 to 3 liters on a non-training day and 3 to 5 liters on a training day, you're grand. You know, what color is your urine? Is it super yellow? Gotta drink more. How's your overall energy? Are you a salty sweater? Have you trained 60 plus minutes? Whatever. If you want to get super specific, weigh yourself before a training session, weigh yourself after a training session. Let's say you lost 1.5 kilos, right? And you drank 500 mils, so you've lost an extra liter of fluids there. So you want to replace around 125 to 150% of that. So we know, okay, I'm going to drink another 1 250 mils or 1,500 mils. Job done. It's as simple as that, right? So yeah, drink more water. That will improve your energy. It's one of the lowest hanging fruits you have. All right. Anything else to add there, Lee?
Salt intake. So I know we kind of touched on electrolytes. I don't think we need electrolyte supplements, but from what I have seen, the vast majority of us are way under on our salt intake. So a rough rule of thumb, just based off kind of studies and an anecdote, is roughly a gram per liter tends to be a pretty sweet spot. Again, it's subjective. Some people need a bit more, some people need a bit less, because as we know, like having such a high level of water intake, we can actually flush out the electrolytes, and if we're not replacing them. And look, we typically get potassium from our foods. If you're talking potatoes, blueberries, I believe, it's a lot easier. Salt, not so much, because higher quality food generally tends not to have the same level of salt. So that's something I would always advise. If we can get salt on each meal, and it's going to play a massive role from a hydration perspective, from a pre-training perspective. And if you're getting up, you're training first thing in the morning, so everyone will default towards electrolytes. But really and truly, if you can just get some water on board, pinch or two of salt, and get some carbs, I would be replacing your electrolytes with an intra-carb shake or a pre-carb shake. Then you're going to be golden. And I think you mentioned it as well, though. A lot of it is subjective. Like, these are all rough guidelines. Ultimately, probably your urine color is the best one to figure it out. But also, I would think your overall brain function, if you've got brain fog, how you feel, how you noticeably feel from an energy perspective, the go-to should always be to improve your water, increase your water. Now, obviously, if you haven't slept for the last 3 nights, it's not a hydration issue. You know what I mean? But it's such an easy, quick win. And it's one of the first things. It's the only thing I come down quite hard on my clients with in the initial couple of days and weeks is water, because we know within 30 minutes you can feel so much better, let alone if you get multiple days of adequate hydration. It can massively help in kind of make up a recovery deficit, training performance, hunger hormones, or hunger cues. Yes, just there's so many benefits to it.
Yeah, it's massive. Yeah, and sodium and electrolyte intake is important, right? Especially if you are an active individual. But just don't fall into the marketing trap of the supplement companies. That you need it upon waking. That's what water is for. You know what I mean? What we know in performance research is that, again, if you're sweating for 60 plus minutes, then your electrolytes become super important. If someone's sitting at a desk all day, like, and getting this electrolyte supplement because X company said so, you're literally just wasting your money.
Nah, get it from
Um,
your food. Like, get
get
it
it from
from
your
your
food
food.
and add a bit of salt to some meals, like you
That's
said. You know what I
that's
mean?
as complicated as it needs to be. It really and
Yeah,
truly is. I have often found
100%.
that sometimes electrolyte supplements can actually cause issues due to the electrolyte kind of breakdown of them, the
Mm,
amounts and the dosages,
mm,
and just because everyone is individual in terms of the actual electrolyte requirements they have as a person. So it's just something to
yep.
always be aware of.
Yep. Yeah. Like you said, as always, the individual differences is a massive principle in training and performance. So, if you're a
Yeah,
super salty sweater, all right, yeah, you might need electrolytes after
yeah.
45 minutes of training.
If
The
you're doing
climate as
multiple
well, obviously.
sessions a day, you know what I
Yeah.
mean?
Then in these scenarios, hydration and electrolytes become more important. But if you're just a normal guy sitting at your desk all day, just don't fall into the trap of the marketing companies, or the
Yeah,
supplement companies, should I say? Because their goal is to make money off people like
yeah.
you and me. Sweet. So, big topic, and one of the last topics then about energy is meals and nutrition, obviously, and specifically the composition of those meals. So we all eat food in a given day. What should our plate look like, and what kind of nutritional compositions should we be focusing on to help us with our daily energy?
Yeah. Well, I think probably the first place to start is where we actually get our energy from. And so energy itself, we get from glucose, which we get from carbohydrates. So
Hmm.
for anyone who is low energy, like your carb intake is always going to be a pretty good place to look. But
Yep.
that isn't the end destination, because what we need to do now is we need to essentially make sure we're eating the adequate amount of carbs from the right sources, but also how at the rate at which we break them down and digest them. And that's where the
Mm.
rest of our plate generally comes in from purely from an energy perspective, is we need to make sure we have adequate amounts of protein, fiber, and fats to build a balanced meal. Serves a lot of different
Yep.
functions, but just to
Yep.
ensure the kind of more optimal breakdown digestion of your energy containing foods. And it doesn't have to be anything crazy. Like, it really truly doesn't. If you're talking even purely looking at your plate, because everyone eats off the plate for the most part, if you have a quarter of protein, a quarter of carbs, fill the rest with your veggies, maybe some
Bunch of
fruits.
veggies. Yep.
Your
Yep.
fats typically is going to be maybe mixed in through a small bit of dressing, fat, or cuts of meat. You might have
Yep.
different aspects to it, but that's all it needs to be. So
Yep.
why and how this impacts our energy is blood sugar regulation. So we have all been there where all of a sudden we're crashing and we're spiking from an energy perspective. Come to evening time, it's like we've just flatlined, and all of a sudden, where does that lead to? It leads to cravings, it leads to snacks, it leads to uncontrollable binges. And like, the inclination is to think that it's just ill discipline, it's willpower. I
Mm.
wouldn't say 9 times out of 10, but in the vast majority of cases, the actual issue is your physiology is just misaligned in this case.
Yep.
Your
Yep.
body's signal for energy is that craving, is that feeling. That's a sign that we're really restricted. We are really in need of energy right now. So it's going
Mm.
to make you get it however it possibly can. But by having a more balanced breakdown of a meal, then we slow down digestion. We have slower these carbohydrates. We have fiber alongside, and we're also eating. And this will go dive a bit deeper. We're also eating at regular intervals in our day. So energy
Yep.
and energy production is it's very cyclical, in the sense that our body is run off a schedule. So if you're eating at the same times every day, your body is going to modulate its own energy production based around this, and its own kind of perception of energy, both high and low. And if we go a step deeper, it's also understanding that your insulin response plays a massive role here. So for example, we all know someone who eats maybe 3 times a day and they have no issues, they're perfectly satisfied, energy is great. If someone else did that, they would feel like shit. And
Yeah.
once we take into account that food quality and all is fine, it's not the issue. Likelihood is the individual's response from an insulin perspective. Like myself, for example, which I've known just through extensive bloods over the last kind of 2 to 3 years, I'd have quite a high, quick, or quite a sensitive insulin response. So I have to have carbs every 3 hours, or I will start dropping. I'll start going hypo, and I'll
Mm.
feel it every. Apologies, there's someone out the back working on the wall.
Yeah, I thought there was someone running up your
I
stairs,
was
man.
like, what the fuck?
What's going on there?
But just back to my original point anyway. So like so everyone's going to have a different requirement there, and it's ultimately finding what that split looks like. Typically, I have found it's 3 solid meals at least and a snack mixed into the big gap, because there's always going to be a big gap somewhere in our day. It's typically between breakfast and lunch for most people, because they might get their breakfast 6, 7, 8 o'clock. Lunch might not be till 1 or 2, whereas their evening meal could be at 6. So it's
Yeah.
wherever your biggest window is where we want to put in, fill in that gap essentially. But some people, it could be 5 meals, it could be 6 meals, and not necessarily massive meals. But it's something worth asking yourself, that if your food quality is great, your meal timing is on point, experiment and just see, maybe do I just need more frequent servings of carbohydrates?
Mm. Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Love it, man.
it's a tough place to be if you're eating well and everything else is perfect. Well, why do I still feel like shit?
Mm.
That
Mm.
could be something worth. It could be something just worth diving into. You know what I mean?
100%. 100%. Yeah. That balanced meal framework, man, is one of the most impactful things that people get, coming in. The vast majority of people just aren't eating that way. Carbohydrates are of low fiber sources, minimal fruits and vegetables.
Yeah,
Most people don't eat healthy fats, so it's these low fiber carbohydrates with low quality proteins. Usually is what people are eating. So you add in the healthy fats to help regulate blood sugars and better hormonal support. That's going to give us more sustained energy throughout the day. Just from those two things, we're not getting cravings, we're not getting crashes. Fiber is another blood sugar regulator, like you said. That's going to be more sustained, slow release energy throughout the day. And obviously the hydration side of things as well. So if you are not applying that balanced meal framework, and obviously the fruits and vegetables is another one, which is obviously more fiber again, more sustained energy, less cravings, and they're full of water. It's literally hydration. The more fruits and vegetables that you have. So if you're just think about the meals that you have and then compare it against that framework, you're like, actually, I never eat healthy fats. No
yeah,
wonder I'm wrecked, or my testosterone super low from my recent blood test, or whatever the case may be. You know, so yeah, it's a massive one, and just the vast majority of the population will get so much from just applying that one simple framework. You know,
100%. And
conditionally it can change. Pre and post training is one of the things, depending on the training session, where you would change that, but that's
yeah,
a conversation for another day. But most people can just use that and get massive benefit from it.
yeah, and it's something that I have a bit of a gripe with, is this whole blood sugar balancing. That's fucking the
Mm,
thing on social media. It's not
mm,
that complicated. It really and
mhm.
truly isn't. They're not going to do anything magic. They will literally help you build a plate. They will help you
Yeah,
identify good foods from bad foods and foods that work for you. Yeah,
that's it.
and not many of them will be telling you maybe you need to eat more frequently. They'll be saying you should only eat your 3 meals and
Yeah,
you don't need
yeah,
to look like
yeah.
X, Y, or Z. You know what I mean? I
I
wraps
I
my
love
head.
that one, man. I love that one. I'm going through it, like, I look at people's food diary. I'm just like, oh yeah, yeah, you had pretty balanced meals. I was just like, but there's an 8 hour gap
Yeah,
between you know what I mean? I'm
but
just like, let's
that's
add a meal here, and they're like, oh my
but
god, I feel amazing.
put it to you this way: like if you have an 8 hour gap between 2 meals, that's the same as when you go asleep and you wake up. You know what I
It's
mean?
mental. It's
It
mental.
does.
Obviously, your blood sugars are going to reduce, and you're going to get an intense hunger pang around
Yeah.
dinner time, and you're snacking like a madman. You know.
But the problem
Um.
as well, though, is like we become blunted because, again, as our body is an adaptive organism, if we're constantly faced with these signals that are just constantly being ignored, the body is just going to blunt them. It's going to become desensitized to them. And that's where all of a sudden you have someone who maybe only eats breakfast or only has one meal and they're stuffed, but they still feel like
Yeah.
shit and they can't eat more. And that is
Yeah.
why. And it's crazy because what generally happens then, is you start slowly building food back up, and it's like their hunger switch just kicks back on. It's like, geez, I
Yeah.
haven't been hungry in months, and all of a sudden you
Hmm.
can eat breakfast and you can have dinner, and
Hmm.
yeah, it's
It will
crazy. It's
adapt.
absolutely, yeah, for sure,
It
man.
will adapt. Love it. So look, let's close it there, my man. I want to ask you one more question. So, we touched on a lot of things today and hopefully people got a lot of value from it. But if there are people listening, what's the one thing that you think that they can take away and act on it tomorrow? It's going to give them the biggest impact. What's the one thing that you think?
I think from an energy perspective, it is. Well, see, if we're talking immediately from tomorrow, drink your water and eat more balanced meals. That's probably going to
Yeah,
give you the biggest return on
that's it.
investment. But if you're
Hmm.
talking about long term, dive into your mind, figure out why everything is the way it is, because that is where your energy really truly lives and where it comes from. You can,
Yep.
you can out fucking energy a lot of different things, but if your mindset is off, it's constantly going to be what's pulling you down.
Yeah. No, it's a
What about
fact. It's
you?
a fact. Yeah, yeah, those two things, man, are definitely the lowest hanging fruit, that and sleep. Stress management is more of it takes time to build those habits, right? Meditation, journaling, time in nature, light exposure, they all have an impact on energy, but the other lowest hanging fruit is just getting that sleep. If you don't have the
Yeah,
privilege of regular sleep and wake times, utilize naps, anywhere from 20 to 40-minute nap or a full 90-minute nap. If you're kind of in between those two times, you're bang smack in the middle of a stage three sleep, you're going to wake up feeling worse. Just kind of use that little framework for napping. I like to use with clients that helps a lot, you know.
I
So get
actually
that
take
sleep
back my
in.
answer. My answer is environment, because environment I think
Mm.
encompasses everything.
Yeah,
If
yeah,
you can
no, it's a
align your
fact.
environment, then everything is fucking ace. Funny one on the naps though. The naps are a fucking game changer. Like if I've had, say, like last week we were moving, just sick, and it was just a lot of late nights, a lot of early mornings. Stress was higher, so I was
Yep.
completely
Mm.
wiped towards the end of the week. 20-minute nap for the first couple of days, a fucking game changer. Really
Madness,
is.
isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a game changer. Deadly. Love it, lads. That's it for today. So, if you made it to this far in the episode, thank you very much. We hope it was very valuable. And share this with someone who's always telling you that how tired they are. Share it with your brother, share it with your father, share it with a friend, share it far and wide to anyone that this would help. And we'll catch you on the next one.
See you next time.
Love it.